Great. Welcome to our West County Disaster Town Hall program. Before we begin, I'm going to hand it over to Jordi, our Spanish interpreter, for a brief announcement in Spanish.
Buenas tardes y bienvenidos a nuestra reunión comunitaria de preparación ante los desastres. Deseamos informarles que habrá traducción al simultáneo y podrán encontrar la función de traducción en el icono inferior de la pantalla para poder escoger su idioma de preferencia. De igual forma, lo estaremos transmitiendo al español por nuestros canales en YouTube. Pueden dejar sus comentarios de igual manera en la casilla de conversación de Facebook o de YouTube. Vamos de regreso con la supervisora Linda Hopkins.
Thank you so much, Jordi. We're just going to pause for a moment as we switch him over to the Spanish channel. And with that, I would like to begin with a brief overview of the program that we will be presenting to you tonight, and to introduce the wonderful panelists that you see in front of you. We're going to begin the evening with evacuation information. Nancy Brown, our Community Preparedness Manager at the County of Sonoma Department of Emergency Management, will be tag teaming with Misti Wood, who is the Community Engagement Liaison for the County of Sonoma Sheriff's Department. After that, we'll be moving on to a portion related to home hardening and fire preparation, where I'm pleased to announce that Division Chief and Fire Marshal Cyndi Foreman and Community Outreach Specialist Jim Boggeri will be providing some actionable information about how to make your homes safer. Then we'll be moving on to a very exciting community project, which is regarding GMRS Communications. Damian, Bouné, and Mike Nicholls will be talking a little bit about the GMRS community infrastructure and communications infrastructure that they have been working very hard on over the past several months. I would also like to make an announcement regarding how we'll be accepting questions. We're anticipating that the first hour of the program will really be these presentations and all of this information, and then we want to reserve a half an hour at the end for your questions, which you can either type into Facebook or you can utilize the Q&A sort of function on Zoom. And please note that you can also upvote those questions. So if someone has already asked your question, you don't have to do a duplicate one, just sort of click that little like button and that one will float up to the top. Now, I just want to sort of give a little bit of an introduction in terms of the extremity of the circumstances that are currently facing us here in Sonoma County. We are in the midst of what is likely Sonoma County's drought of record. We've got a local rain gauge that dates back to 1897. And it logged the current and prior water years as the first and second driest water years on record since that record was beginning to be kept in 1897. At a recent town hall, we had a state water official calling this current drought unprecedented and actually comparing it to the Dust Bowl. And as you know, local reservoirs as well as vegetation moisture levels are at record lows. Vegetation moisture has actually been unfortunately on a downward trajectory over the last 5 years. And currently we're seeing vegetation moisture levels that are very similar to what we would be seeing in August. That means that we're not waiting for fire season anymore. We are in fire season and we all need to be prepared for what we may be undergoing in the next few months. So that's a little bit of a grim opening, but I just want everyone to recognize the severity of the circumstances that we are facing, which really means don't be scared, be prepared. And we've got a whole bunch of folks here today who are going to tell you how to better prepare yourself for wildfire season. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce Nancy Brown and Misti Wood.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. And I love your don't be scared, be prepared. So that's my new jingle. That was really nice. And I think that's really the key here is that we love Sonoma County. We live in Sonoma County. We accept the fact that there's some things that spin a little bit out of our control in terms of what we can do, but there's so many things we can do to protect ourselves, protect our property, and make sure that we and our families all stay safe. So to that end, at the Department of Emergency Management, we've created a really nice tool this year to help you with your evacuation planning. And it looks like this, and it's called an Evac Pack. Now, these are in English as well as in Spanish. And they have some really nice tools inside for you. So this is a planning guide, and it gives you basically step-by-step what to do to plan how you will handle emergencies in your family. Another really nice tool in here is this great checklist that you can utilize to plan in advance. Now, the key for all of these things is that we do them in advance so that when something does happen, we're ready to respond calmly. We know what we want to do. We grab the things that are valuable and important to us, and we're ready to leave and keep everybody safe. So that's one of the real goals of this Evac Pack is if you've been wanting to make plans or you've made some plans, but you haven't really gotten it where you want it to, this would just really take you to the next level of really thinking through with your family what it is you want to do in a number of different scenarios. So right now, of course, we're hyper-focused on fire season, but we still have earthquakes to think about. We have floods to think about. Most of these have a few basic things in common, but then there's a few other things about each of these events that you want to do something a little different for. You know, for floods, of course, you're going to pack a little bit different kind of gear than you are for fire season, those types of things. So I urge you all to think about these Evac packs. Now, anywhere in the county, a Sonoma County library will have these for anybody to go pick up at no charge. So you can just walk up right to the library counter and you can tell them you would like an Evac pack. If your library is not open yet and they're doing curbside service still, you can go to the curb and say you'd like an Evac pack. Also, if you happen to be one of those people who's really tight with your neighbors and working with your neighbors on these types of things, and you'd like to pick up 10 or 20 or 30 to pass out in your neighborhood, you are welcome to email me, and I will put my email in the chat. And you can email me and we can make an arrangement to get you a full set of these instead of going to the library and taking their supply. But I'd be happy to provide these for anybody who would like them in quantity to share the love with the rest of their neighbors. I know in West County, we've had a couple of really great neighbors who have already picked up, 30 or 40 or 50 to pass out in their neighborhood. And I love to see that. So that brings me to the next important topic. And that is when you're standing on your front porch looking around, those houses that you can see may likely be your first responders in an emergency. So it's really important for you to think about, if you don't already know your neighbors, if you haven't already engaged with your neighbors, at least in some basic information, that you take some time before we get too much deeper into this season to learn a little bit more about what's going on in your neighborhood and get a few of your neighbors together. And just, it doesn't have to be a formal group. You don't have to be a Fire Safe Council. You don't have to be a COPE group. You don't have to be a Map Your Neighborhood group. You can just be 5 neighbors standing on the corner talking and just make a discovery of what you have, what your neighbors have, and have a conversation about how you can support each other. Find out if you have a neighbor who needs support in an evacuation. Maybe they don't drive. Maybe they don't drive at night. Maybe they, some different things like that. So find out who you can support. And then if you need support, find out who can support you. Because while you may have a plan that your son or daughter from Santa Rosa is going to drive to Guerneville and pick you up, we all know there's some instances where that plan might fall short. And so having a backup plan with somebody hyper local to you would be really important at that time. So I urge you all to get out there and talk to your neighbors. Now, we do have a great seminar coming up at the Sonoma County Library, and I'll also put that link in the chat when I'm finished. And this is a chat specifically about alert and warning, and we're also going to be talking about neighborhood groups. So we have people from a bunch of different neighborhood groups who are going to talk about how you can get your neighbors together and get involved with your neighbors in planning for emergency preparedness together. So it'll give everybody who's on the webinar, it'll be via Zoom also, an opportunity to learn more about some of the different formats that there are that are more formal organizational ways to work in your neighborhood and learn what some of those different things are. Now, this will be on July 10th, that's a Saturday, from 11 to 12. As I said, via the webinar, you can go to the Sonoma County Library's website to pre-register. You do have to pre-register, but of course it is free. So there's 2 really great things you can do to the library. You can pick up an Evac Pack and you can come learn more about alert and warning, as well as how to get neighborhood groups started within your neighborhoods. So with that, I will pass it to Misti Wood, who is going to talk more about evacuations.
Thank you, Nancy, and give me just a moment, please, while I share my screen. So I've got a PowerPoint for everybody. And we should, my hope is that you all can see that. And let's see, here we go. All right, Nancy, would you give me a thumbs up if you can see that? Excellent, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. My name is Misti. I work at the Sheriff's Office, and during disasters, I co-lead our crisis communications team. So we're the ones who are putting out the Nicholls, the press conferences with the sheriff, all of the social media, all of that comes out of the team that I work with during disasters. So we're going to talk tonight about how to be prepared for evacuations in 2021. And we're going to cover really 3 items tonight. The first are evacuation zones. And then we're going to talk about evacuation tags. And I'm just going to cover alert and warning on a very high level. As Nancy said, they've got a great series coming up that really goes into more detail about alert and warning. But I do want to touch on it because it's a key way of how you might find out about an evacuation. So starting with the evacuation zones, you may have already heard about these. Hopefully you have. We've been doing a lot of public education about it. Evacuation zones are predetermined geographic areas that are already labeled with a zone number. So as we're ordering evacuations, it's really easy to understand whether or not the evacuation order applies to you. In other words, if you know that when you hear your zone with an evacuation order, that applies to you and it's time to leave. So it's very easy to look up your zone. I'm going to show you, I'm going to go through the bullets here very briefly and then show you on the website how it works. The link to go to is socoemergency.org/evacuation-map. So it's hosted by our partners over at the Department of Emergency Management. You enter your address either in the text box or in the map, and your address will come up with your evacuation zone. And the most important part of this exercise is remembering your evacuation zone number. So write it down, put it on the fridge, put it in your cell phone, commit it to memory just like your phone number, whatever it is that works for you so you can really easily know whether or not you are subject to an evacuation order when those come out. So let's take a quick peek over here, pardon me, at the evacuation map. When you go to socoemergency.org/evacuation-map, this is the web page that you land on. So you get a couple of paragraphs about what evacuation zones are that encourage you to look up your evacuation zone numbers for your home, your work, your kids' school, other people who are important to you. As Nancy mentioned, perhaps there's somebody who's reliant on you or somebody that you help care for. It's important to know their zone too. And there's really 2 ways you can look this up. You can just enter it in the box right here. I'm gonna use the address for our good friends at the fire district for their fire station in Guerneville on Armstrong Woods Road. So as you start to type, the addresses will auto-populate. So this right here, you enter your address, you either hit enter or click on search, and the zone number pops up right here. So this number, SON-1F3, is the zone number for the fire district station that's in downtown Guerneville there. So that number is what you're going to want to write down for your house or for your work. That's the one that you're going to want to remember. I'm going to take you through the map very briefly as well, so you can see kind of what the differences are between the 2. The map does take a moment to load because it's chock full of really good information. During a disaster, not only do we have the evacuation zones on here, but the county also includes the fire perimeter and heat mapping, road closures, other pieces of information that are really important that you may want to know about during a disaster. So go to the top left-hand corner here, type your address. When you click on it, the map will automatically zoom to your address. And if it doesn't pop up right away for you, you can click nearby and it'll pop up right there, SON-1F3. So that's the 2 ways that you can get to know your zone. The nice thing about the map is it can give you a little bit of context as well. So using Guerneville as an example, you can see the different evacuation zones that are around Guerneville, where we're trying to have zones that make sense, that are large enough that we're really capturing the people who need to be gone during a fire, but also small enough that we're not overly evacuating people. It's kind of a fine line based on the population, the road system, et cetera. So that's how you know your zone. That's how to look it up. We'll switch back to the presentation here. And the next thing I want to talk about briefly are the evacuation tags. So the evacuation tags you may have heard about. These are tags that say Sonoma Sheriff and evacuated on them. So as you leave, if it's safe for you to do so, if you have time, you tie it up in a highly visible location. And what this does is this helps deputies and other first responders really quickly know whether or not you've already evacuated. And it saves them time from driving down your driveway, knocking on your door, checking other buildings. It saves them time in doing those evacuations because they already know that you're gone and you've already gotten that evacuation order, and they can move on to the next property and focus their time on helping somebody who might need a little bit more of assistance. So this is the idea that doing something small on a large scale has a big impact. And we know that the faster evacuations get done, then the sooner our fire partners can get in there and focus on that firefighting mission. And the more lives are saved, the quicker we can get everybody out of there. I mentioned, a highly visible location, which is intentionally not specific because all of our properties are a little bit different, especially in West County. Some of us have homes right up on the street, and some of us you have to go through a gate and drive a mile down a private driveway before you see it, before you get to your house. So these are some examples on the screen of what might be a highly visible location. So if you think about if a deputy's driving up and he or she has never seen your property before, what is one of the first things that they're going to see? And that's a good place to put that tag. There's a lot of ways that somebody might know that you're evacuated. We hear that the concern, understandable, of course, of, well, if I use an evacuation tag, people will know I'm gone, and then it makes me a target for looting. So I want to share a little bit about what our security is while you're gone, in addition to how people know you're gone in the first place. In addition to the evacuation tags, it's all over social media. You hear it through emergency alerts. You'll hear the zones as they're being evacuated through the emergency alert system. It's talked about a lot in the press, sometimes at a local level, sometimes on an international level. And then as we're evacuating, if we have time, we will tie yellow tape onto your property, somewhere in your property, so we know that you have that you're aware of the evacuation order. So it's a quick and easy visual indicator in the field for all the different deputies and mutual aid officers coming through that you've received that evacuation order. So there's lots of ways that people might know that you're not home during a disaster. And that can be scary. I live in West County. I've lived here over a decade. I've been evacuated twice. Nothing about evacuating is fun. It's necessary to get out of the way so that we're not hurt, but it's also can be very produce a lot of anxiety because you're leaving your home and you don't know what's going to happen, right? So I want to share just a little bit about how we provide security while you're gone, because our first priority is your life. Once everybody is safe, then our second priority is property and keeping property as safe as possible while you're gone. So we set up roadblocks around sort of the perimeter of the evacuation zones to prevent people from coming in. We have patrols going through the evacuated areas, and those are both our deputies and also mutual aid officers. We are very fortunate that we have very supportive and capable mutual aid officers all over, Northern California and the Bay Area who come to help us during every disaster we've ever had. And we're proactive. We have a zero tolerance policy when it comes to looting. So in the past several fires that we've had very, very, very few arrests for looting. We've had about a dozen arrests per fire of a different section of the penal code that is unauthorized entry in an evacuation zone. So in other words, somebody disobeyed the legal order of the sheriff, they were in that evacuation zone and they were arrested. So again, there have been a couple looting incidents, but for the most part, we are catching people before they potentially are doing something worse. So you can get your tag at the River Substation. That's probably the closest to most of the folks in West County. Several of the fire departments out there also have them. I believe Bodega Bay does. We brought some up to Timber Cove. We brought some up to Sea Ranch. So several of the fire stations out there have these evacuation tags available for you, in addition to picking them up at the River Sub in downtown Guerneville. If you have a larger group, if you have an organized neighborhood group or a COPE group or something like that, and you want to distribute to your network, we are happy to give you a package of evacuation tags so you can distribute them amongst your network. So all you have to do is email us at the email address on the screen, which is sheriff-outreach at sonoma-county.org and just let us know how many evacuation tags you're looking for, and we are happy to get those to you. So we've talked about evacuation maps, we've talked evacuation tags. I want to cover again, just at that high level, alert and warning. How do you know when evacuation is happening? So the alerts, the ways that you might find out are listed on the screen right here. The top several bullets, the top 5 bullets in that bright green box are ways the sheriff's office could alert you of an evacuation. So the first one listed is the high-low siren. So the high-low siren is a newer siren that we've installed on all of our vehicles. I know the fire district has them as well. It's becoming more common. It's a very distinct sounding siren that is only used during evacuations. And I'm going to play just a little clip for you right now so you can hear it at home as well. So when you hear the high-low, it's time to go. That will only be used during an evacuation. You may have a deputy knock on your door telling you that there's an evacuation order in place, or you may hear a deputy making announcements over the PA system as he or she is driving through your neighborhood or nearby streets. You may get an alert. Hopefully you'll get an emergency alert, which I'll talk a little bit more about on the next slide. And we also put all of our evacuation order information on social media. You'll notice on the screen here that I have an asterisk next to social media. Not everything you read on social media is accurate, as you've probably noticed. So as you're going to social media for information, just be cognizant of where the information is coming from, because it's not always reliable. So we always recommend that you identify those reliable sources first and know where to go for accurate information. The media always covers evacuations. Our phones are blowing up as soon as we issue an evacuation order. They're very good about spreading the word. And as Nancy mentioned, neighbors helping neighbors saves lives. And so you may hear about it from your neighbor, or you may be sharing that evacuation order with your neighbor. And diving in a little bit deeper into alert and warning, there's really 2 different categories. On the left-hand side of your screen, you have alerts that you have to sign up for. And on the right-hand side of your screen, you have forced alerts you don't sign up for that, but you may receive. So the sheriff's office issues Nicholls, and we have reverse 911, both in those green boxes on the screen. Our partners at Department of Emergency Management are in charge of the alert and warning program, but we also help them because we know that, keeping everybody safe really is a team effort, and we're out there knocking on doors. And so we take it upon ourselves to support them as much as we can and get you the evacuation order information as quickly as possible. So make sure that you sign up, if you're not already, for SoCo Alert and Nicholls. It's really important to have both of those systems in place, because that way you get redundancy. It's better to get too much information than not enough, especially if one of them fails for whatever reason. The forced alerts that you might hear include the wireless emergency alert, and this is similar to an Amber Alert that you get on your cell phone. You may see something on the TV or on the radio through the emergency alert system where they interrupt the broadcast with an evacuation order. You may get a call on your landline through the reverse 911 system, and you may hear an alert on your weather radio. If you have a Noaa weather radio, you may get that as well. So there's lots of different ways that you might find out about an evacuation. There is no perfect system to let you know when an evacuation is happening, but all of these ways add up in helping you know when an evacuation order is in place. That concludes my presentation. I want to thank you for your time. We've got follow-up information. If you're looking for more information from the Sheriff's Office on evacuations, you can go to our website. You can also follow us on social media. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen, and Supervisor, I will turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Misti and Cyndi. That was great information, and I really appreciate that. As a reminder to everyone, if you have any questions for Misti or Cyndi, you can go ahead and put them in the Q&A function on Zoom, or you can enter them in the comments on Facebook, and we will answer them at the end of all of the presentations. So with that, I will hand it over to Cyndi and Jim for a little bit of information on fire preparedness and home hardening.
Thanks, Supervisor Hopkins. you know, I just have to say, I can't thank each and every one of you that are on here tonight for taking time out of your busy lives to, you know, dig in and take a moment to kind of, you know, see what we can do to be just as prepared and ready for what will likely be a very long and challenging fire season. The amazing thing about West County is you are such a resilient community. Fire is not the first thing that you all have, you know, experienced as a disaster. You've all been through floods for many, many years, and you are a very resilient and hardy community. And so again, I just applaud you all for taking time to just be here and give us a voice. Want to touch on a couple of things tonight. Want to give you a little bit of an overview on sort of what we're up against this fire season. Supervisor Hopkins kind of touched on that a bit. Let you know what we're doing to get ready and what we are doing to make sure that we are taking the best care of our community that we can. And then just give you a few food for thought. And one other thing that's really important is just to give you a state of affairs of the fire district. Obviously, we've had a big consolidation happen here in Sonoma County with the Sonoma County Fire District. And we have gone from about 39 different fire agencies within Sonoma County to moving in a consolidation format, which is so much more effective and financially and fiscally responsible for our community. But what it's also done is it's given us the amazing ability to provide so many more resources and support to our community. And just a quick overview on that, so you sort of know what Sonoma County Fire District is providing for you as we move into this fire season. We effectively July 1st, the Forestville Fire District will become part of the Sonoma County Fire District. And one amazing thing that's going to happen with that consolidation is we are going to be able to staff paramedic engine 24/7 at the Forestville Fire Station. That means that that fire engine that responds to your house that in the past has had basic life support, that means EMTs, very qualified, you know, awesome firefighters with great skills. We are now actually going to have a paramedic firefighter on that engine 24/7. So that's an amazing resource we're being able to seed into the community. And that will not only be a benefit to the Forestville community, but also to the Guerneville and Rio Nito community. So we're super excited about that. We're very excited about this consolidation and the ability to provide, you know, an extended, provide better service to the community. So we're really looking forward to that. One of the things that I want you all to take some comfort in knowing is that when we go into these events of red flag warnings or wind events, what happens here in Sonoma County and within our fire district is we bring additional staff on, we backfill fire engines, we bring people in on overtime, and we put them out on tactical patrols. So what I want to give you comfort in is when you see those fire engines out in your neighborhoods on some of these really challenging weather events that we move into with this fire season, take comfort in that. I think a lot of people get nervous when they see a fire engine. I want you to take comfort when you see that fire engine out in your neighborhood, because that is what we're going to be doing when we know that we're up against some challenging weather conditions. We are going to be providing additional resources and additional coverage in the community. So take comfort in that fire engine kind of driving through your neighborhood. That's a good thing. I also want to let you know that what we've been able to do through our consolidation is we've been able to build out our fire prevention division, which is something that, you know, often in the past with fire service prevention has sort of been the most underfunded portion of the fire service, right? Our firefighters are important, our fire engines, our fire stations, all of that is high priority. But what's been an amazing thing that's happened through consolidation for us in particular is we've been able to actually build out our fire prevention division. And what that means to you all, that means that you have a fire marshal, that's me. You have a deputy fire marshal, that's my second in command. You have 3 fire inspectors that are seated in the community. We have a brand new position, Jim's on tonight. We have a community outreach specialist. I'm super excited about that. Jim is going to be that point of contact in the community to help support all of our community efforts and all of our resources and all of our prevention efforts out in the community. Jim is going to take the lead on that, and we're super excited about that. And then we also have an administrative support position, which means that when we have something that needs to be addressed in our division, it goes to one person She takes that and she puts it into the right calendar, or it gets it to the right person in our division to get it addressed, inspected, noticed, whatever needs to happen. We have I call her Rome. So we have this one person where everything can come to, and we can make sure that we get that handled within our division. So I'm just super excited to tell you that we have a really strong support. We are warriors here for you all, and we will do whatever we can to support you guys in moving forward and making sure that we hold people accountable for maintaining their properties and being prepared for disasters. So with that said, and I'll make sure that we have our website available to you. If you have concerns about a property within the fire district, the best thing that you can do is go onto our website, click on the Vegetation Complaint tab, and put your complaint there, because it goes directly to my admin assistant. She schedules an inspector to inspect that property. She then collects the photos and the inspection report, and we send a violation notice. So that's a one-stop shop to make sure that we are capturing the concerns and complaints within the community. And I'm really proud of the fact that we've done a really good job with that. So one-stop shop, we'll get you directed to that website for any of those complaints or concerns that come in. So looking at how can we each take responsibility and be prepared for this coming fire season. Some of the things that we've done a lot of these community events, and one of the gurus here in our community about vegetation management and home hardening is Caroleon Safford, and many of you on this video tonight have seen her presentations, and I would not have the depth of knowledge that I have without her. But there are two things that she always presses, and that is vegetation management and home hardening, and those go hand in hand. One thing that is really important for me for each of you to take away tonight is that I have the resource of staff that will literally come out to your house if you want us to, and walk your property and tell you what you can do, what you need to do, what you should do, and what you can do to prepare your home and prepare your property so that you are as ready for fire season as you can be. And that's going to cost you nothing. You merely need to make a phone call to our office, and we will get you scheduled with a fire inspector, and they will be out on your property within a week or two to give you that one-on-one guidance on how you can get your property ready. It's great to watch PowerPoints, and it's great to come on these events, but I think it is really important to be able to have that one-on-one person come out and tell you exactly what you can do on your property. And we want to make sure you know that we're here for you, and we're going to do that for you. So, and I'll make sure that that phone number gets out there so that anybody can call and schedule that inspection on their property. We'll be out within a week. So circling back to home survivability is vegetation management and home hardening. And vegetation management is one of the biggest components of home survivability is the 5-foot exclusion zone. And essentially what that means is that 5-foot space off your house, off any structure on your property, should be non-combustible, meaning hardscape. That could be concrete, that could be decomposed granite, pavers. You don't want to have any bushes, any trees, any ornamental plants. One big thing that I see a lot of people put around their house is rosemary. It's beautiful, but any plant with an oil or an odor burns very hot. So that 5-foot exclusion zone is a massive tool in home survivability. The other thing that's a massive tool in home survivability is attic and crawl space venting. There are products on the market that can detour ember intrusion, because as we know in these fires that we have, it's not that massive flame front that comes through that's taking out these neighborhoods. It's that ember shower, those firebrands that are going out miles ahead of the fire and finding receptive fuel beds. Receptive fuel beds are as simple as a cushion on your wicker furniture on your back deck. They're as simple as the entry mat that's made out of, straw that's in front of your front door. It's as simple as a broom in the corner. A lot of times people think it's really these big things that are burning our homes down. And frankly, it's small things, it's little things that are really, taking out our homes. Something as simple as a wood gate that connects your fence to your home. If you have a wood gate, if that fence catches on fire, that gate acts as a conduit to carry that fire into the structure or to the house. So we often really try to teach people, get rid of that wooden gate and put a knot. Wood fences are fine as long as where it connects to the home is non-combustible. That was a really key component in Coffey Park for home-to-home ignition, was those gates. That fences were catching on fire from one house, and that gate connecting to the next house was that conduit. And when we had the Kincaid fire blow into Windsor, I literally was out with some of our fire crews, and I was literally kicking down wooden gates that were connecting to a house in hopes that we wouldn't have home-to-home ignition. So again, sometimes people think it's the big things, and sometimes it's really the little things. Misti touched on a lot of this, but we can't enforce enough for you that redundancy is the tool to stay informed. And while we live in areas that we may struggle with Wi-Fi, we may struggle with internet and those kind of things. I know they're going to talk later about the radios. This is a great tool for folks that live in the West County where they're really challenged with reception, internet, and Wi-Fi. So I really encourage folks, there's really simple, easy ways to stay connected with your neighbors that doesn't require us to be attached to Wi-Fi or internet. There's a lot of communities out right now, and they're going to talk about it today, going to literally the walkie-talkies that our little kids use when they're out on their scooters in the neighborhood. That's actually a super effective tool to stay connected and have communication within your community. We just were awarded, the fire district was awarded a grant through the county for 5,000 Noaa radios. Those are the weather radios that have the ability to work off battery or be able to be plugged in, but those radios have that ability to alert when there is a weather evacuation, WIA alert, wireless emergency alerting. It has that ability to override a silence mode, much like Amber Alerts do on our phone, and alert you to something that's happening. And so we've got 5,000 of those. We're going to be passing those out in the community during different events. If we have groups that are interested as a community that want to give us a poll on how many they need, we'll get those numbers together and we'll get them out to you. So we're super excited about having that and being able to get that into the hands of our community. We are all super fire fatigued. We're all super evacuation fatigued, but it doesn't mean that, fire doesn't recognize that. So we don't get to just kind of fall back on our laurels. We really just have to get our power back and do what we can to remain resilient and ready. One thing that I think is a really important thing that I want to touch on, and it's not an easy subject, but one thing that I want Jim to touch on, who's our community outreach specialist, is I want him to touch on for a minute what it is when we come to your property to defend it. So you have followed all of our orders, you've evacuated, you've put your tags up, you've taken your family to safe refuge. And what does it look like when our fire engine pulls up, and what are we gonna do, and what are our tactical priorities on that property? Just to give you a little window seat view on what we're looking for, because frankly, sometimes this can help guide you when you are prepping to leave or evacuate. There's often times when that evacuation needs to happen right now. Misti touched on those high-low sirens. If you hear high-low sirens in your neighborhood, it is not time to start taking pictures off the wall. It is not time to start gathering up the photo albums. It's time to get in the car and go. That's it. That's all. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Get in your car, get your kids, get your pets, and go. But if we are in a situation where we know there's a fire, we do have some advanced warning, we've got time, we're getting that advisory notice, we're under a warning, not a mandatory evacuation, and we live in an area where we have the opportunity perhaps to have a little bit of time, there are things you can do before you go to prep your property for when firefighters get there. So Jim, I'll let you jump on here, and really quick, I just want to give you a little history on Jim. He just started with the district a month ago. Jim comes off a 34-year career as a seasoned fire veteran, fire captain with the Marin County Fire Department, and has been there, done that, got the t-shirt, got the sweatshirt, got the, you know, everything, and has seen a lot of fire in his career, has worked in an environment very similar to Sonoma County, knows Sonoma County very well. And we're just excited to have him because he brings such a strong perspective on what our challenges are here in Sonoma County. But Jim, I'd love you to just kind of maybe share what it's like when our engine company arrives on a property and what our tactical priorities are and what people can do to help us.
Great, thank you. So from the engine company perspective, first and foremost, what's important to us is our own safety. That's more than anything else. As Cyndi stated, it is critical that each homeowner takes responsibility for their property and make sure that they give us enough room and give us the ability to do what we can to save your homes. Quite frankly, I've seen a lot of homes where people didn't do anything. And unfortunately, when we look at that home compared to the home next door who did a lot of prep and a lot of work, well, obviously, we're going to go to the residents that put the time in to really protect their home. One, it's a safer environment for us. And two, we have a better chance of saving that home. So home hardening is really critical to what we look for when we do get on scene. When we do get to your house, what we're going to do is we're going to back into the house because we want quick access out. If things do go sideways on us and we need to evacuate and leave quickly, we want to be in what we call the go position and ready to go. When we get there, a lot depends on what kind of timeline we have. The more time, the better we have to prep your home. Sometimes we have that luxury and sometimes we don't, which is why we're talking about home hardening and doing your own prep work around your house. It gives us a better opportunity to get in there and do some of the little things that need to be done that you may not think about. Once we get there, we're going to deploy our hose lines around your house to make sure that we can cross water streams around the whole house. We're going to try to find, if you have a ladder before you leave, throw a ladder out. One of the things we want to do is get a ladder to the roof. We want to make sure that we don't have any overhanging branches on your roof line. We want to make sure that we don't have pine needles stuck in the peaks and the valleys and the gutters, because those are all receptive fuel beds. So we're going to get up there if we have time and clean that out. If you have any flammable brush, i.e. your rosemary bushes, Italian cypress, everybody loves Italian cypress, but boy, they go up like Roman candles. We're going to get in there with chainsaws and we're going to cut it all down. We're going to cut it all away. And that extends to decks. Overhanging decks are natural fire traps. As Cyndi said, when we get these ember casts, especially with these heavy winds that we've been seeing in these big conflagrations, decks are collection points for these ember casts. So there are times that we will literally cut the deck away from the house and just drop the deck down the hill, because that is going to be a receptive fuel bed. Firewood, people like to stack firewood up against the house. Worst place for it. We're gonna relocate your firewood all over your yard. Your propane tanks, be sure your propane tanks are absolutely cleared all the way around. If you have a swimming pool, there's chances are we're going to put a pump in there and we're going to draw water from your pool. We're going to stick your garden hose in our engine, and that way we constantly have water flowing. What we're seeing and hearing more commonplace now is people talking about putting sprinkler systems on the rooftops, and there's actually engineers now who are doing this. Well, there's good and bad. I think the jury is still out on the effectiveness of that. While it seems like it's a good idea and you can soak down your home, the reality is very rare do the embers get caught in your roof. The vast majority of our rooftops now are comp roof, so they are fire safe. Where we end up having the problem is under your eaves, where your attic vents are. Those are the areas that we're looking at. As Cyndi said, under any kind of overhangs, under your porch, under your deck. These are the areas that we typically find where the embers get caught into. And when you have these heavy sustained winds, all that does is just fuels that fire and gets it going. I can't tell you how many times we have gone in and done structure protection on houses, and the ember cast came through, the fire front left, everything looked good, and we left, and next thing you know, 15 minutes later, the house is on fire because we missed one. Not uncommon, but we do everything we can. But I tell a lot of the people out there, you need to do your part so we can do ours. Access is a big one for us. If it's very tight, and especially, like I say, typically what we do is we wait for the fire to bump the house. So we're basically in front of that fire. We're using your house to shield us. We're gonna let that fire come, hit the house. As the fire moves through, we're gonna deploy our hoses and we're gonna get out there and put out as many hot spots and as much fire as we can. The other thing being is sometimes we're outgunned. We can't, there's nothing we can do. We need to get out. We need to ensure that our access in and out, especially some of these long driveways, these long narrow canyons in the West County, make it very challenging for us. So, you know, we want to be sure that we do have clear access to get our apparatus in and out in a quick and safe fashion. If we can get inside your house, we're going to do that. We may pull curtains down from your windows. Once again, those are receptive fire beds just from the radiant heat. Any kind of flammable material, rugs, what have you, we are going to do our best to get it out of the way and make sure that it's not there. We may take a lot of the stuff down and throw it in your garage, and that way it's protected. We don't want you to lose your things, but really it all depends on what kind of time frame we have when we get in there. Sometimes we don't have the time to do any prep, and sometimes we're able to get in there early enough that we can do quite a bit of prep and really protect your home. Ideally, when you are protecting, when you are doing your protection, when you're doing your landscaping around your home, what we ideally hope for is that in the event that we can't be at your home when this fire is coming, that your home survives simply because of the clearance that you did around your home, i.e. the home hardening, 5 feet away from the home, taking out these heavy oily plants, the juniper, the rosemary, the Italian cypress, any kind of juniper is really flammable. Limbing up your trees, you know, one of our big concerns is we want to ensure that any fire that's on the ground does not get in the canopies of the trees. We can fight fire on the ground, but when it gets in these canopies of these 50, 60, 100-foot trees, forget it. There's nothing we can do until it drops back down to the ground. So it's very, very important that everybody limbs up their trees a minimum of 6 feet. If you're on a hillside, we want to go even higher because the flame lengths are going to be even greater, are going to be even greater when they're climbing up slope. So that's really some of the biggest things that you can do for it. Cyndi, is there anything else I'm missing that you can think of?
No, and I think one thing that I want to say is that, this is sort of a subject, frankly, that is hard for people to hear because we're literally talking about what we're going to do when this happens. And I think we've, kind of tiptoed around fire for a lot of years. And unfortunately, this is when we have this arena is when we need to have those courageous conversations. And we need to be really honest with folks about what this is going to look like and what we're up against when we get there and what you can do to make it so that we have a fighting chance. And number one is you getting out, you following those evacuation orders. Because one thing that, Misti touched on, right, is life before property. That's our same perspective. And if we arrive at a home and there is a homeowner that has chosen to stay, that has chosen not to follow the evacuation order, all of a sudden what that does for us is we take one of our firefighters and they become, sorry to say this, they become a babysitter because we cannot let that person die on our watch. We cannot let life take property, take precedent over, we cannot let property take precedent over life. So what I want you to understand is if you choose to stay, you essentially take one of our critical firefighters out of being able to defend your property or the community and or put them in harm's way to make sure that nothing happens to you. So just remember that. That's a really important thing we want you to know is when you get told to evacuate, please evacuate. Let us get in there and let us do the really scary, hard part of the job that we're trained to do. Again, these are really courageous conversations and they're not easy to have. But I think it's really important that you all know from our perspective what it looks like when we get there, because I think that hits home the fact that we're asking you all to take severe ownership in your properties and being prepared for this really challenging fire season. Look, California, coastal California is at threat almost year round now. And it's just the harsh reality that we're all living within. I live in the wildland urban interface. I am too fire fatigued and evacuation fatigued. And I share your struggle and I share your pain, but we're here for you and we can only do this together. We cannot do this alone. So thank you so much, Jim. That was great. I appreciate your perspective. And I'm sure there's going to be a ton of questions. And Supervisor Hopkins, let me know if there's anything else you'd like us to touch on.
Thank you so much, Cyndi and Jen. That was fantastic information. And I really agree with your last statement, which is that we're all in this together, and we also need to take personal responsibility for our property and make sure that we are not putting first responders' lives at risk, whether that is a sheriff's deputy who is coming to, execute those evacuations, or a fighter who is responding to the fire. And with that, speaking of amazing West County residents who have taken leadership roles in their own communities and really trying to make sure that all of their neighbors and really all of the North Coast is prepared for wildfire and prepared to be able to communicate in the event of a disaster, I'm going to hand it over to Mike and Damian, who have been hard at work on GMRS radio communications in West County.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here. Just a moment. There we are. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for having Mike and I here tonight to discuss Neighborhood Emergency Radio Communications Project for West Sonoma County. We're probably not going to have enough time to go through every item on each one of these slides, but they will be available for viewing on the internet afterward. Let's see, there we go. So why radio? In recent years, Sonoma County has experienced multiple emergency incidents that involved wide-scale or localized communications infrastructure failure for one reason or another. While a great deal of work has been done to remedy those issues, radio provides a backup communications mechanism that does not rely on any of those systems in order to function. That could be public safety power-offs, failure of backup systems, etc. When nothing else works, radio does. With apologies to the amateur radio community for stealing your motto, it's true of radio in general. So how does it work? Multiple radio services work together to provide communications from a neighborhood level and throughout the county. That includes FRS, GMRS, and amateur radio. They all fill a particular need. For amateur radio and via GMRS repeaters, communication during an emergency is operated as what we call a directed net, where someone fills the role of a net control station, or NCS. This person preferably has access to dial 911 or is an amateur radio operator. Neighborhoods can also utilize this pattern and practice at communicating on a directed net is encouraged. Residents practiced using scanners and understanding emergency traffic can help keep the community informed. Analog radio, which is what we're talking about here, can be operated in two basic modes: direct and repeater. Direct mode, also called simplex or radio to radio, is useful for neighborhood communications and for a circumstance where a repeater has failed, that is talking to your neighbors and getting information around locally. It does have limitations around terrain and obstructions. Repeaters allow extending the range of radios across a wider area. This is how neighborhood leaders can communicate upstream to reach additional resources beyond their neighborhoods. So how can we use radio? So outside of the basic day-to-day kind of communications, asking for a tool or calling somebody home, we can use radio to help us maintain situational awareness during an emergency by sharing information with our community. We can also use radio to request local assistance, like help evacuating, or to report critical issues like a blocked evacuation route, where local residents may need to assist in clearing the path. And that's that neighbors helping neighbors that we keep hearing about. There's also the potential to communicate with other neighborhoods. For example, to report a problem during evacuation that may affect a large number of people. Maybe a road down the way is out, or there's a tree down or whatnot. As a last resort, radio can be used to communicate through a chain to emergency services. This is really, really important for anybody who's using radio neighborhood emergency radio communications are not a replacement or an equivalent to 911. If you have an emergency, always try to call 911 first. If that fails, then you'll do what you have to do. In an emergency situation, when 911 is not available, radio provides a last chance. If necessary, and assuming we are well organized, we will be able to get a message out through our community or through an amateur radio operator who has access to 911 or who can reach a third party who does. In worst case situations, we may be able to communicate with the County of Sonoma Auxiliary Communications Service, who can communicate with the county OC, through which emergency services can be notified. But let's all hope that is not necessary. This is a best effort, community-driven system. While those participating in building this system are doing everything to provide tools and capabilities, it is only as useful as we all collectively make it. So who's involved in this? Take a moment to look at the organizations participating in the project. County of Sonoma Transportation and Public Works is a major participant, providing both resources and equipment. Monterey Fire Foundation, Cazadero Community Club, and Cazadero Firefighters Association have all provided funding. Fort Ross Volunteer Fire Department, Timber Cove Volunteer Fire Department, Wellkind, Taravana, and Safer West County have all provided funding and repeater sites. The County of Sonoma Auxiliary Communications Service, Sonoma County Radio Amateurs, Coastal Hills Radio Group, Gernwood Neighborhoods Association, and the City of Sebastopol have all provided guidance and leadership. If I've missed anyone, my apologies. This list keeps getting longer, and now I'm going to pass this over to Mike.
Thank you very much, Damian. We did forget one organization, and that's the Wildwood Conservation Group between Guerneville and Cazadero. So what are we doing? Well, you know, first off, we're advocating for emergency radio communications. Our task for the last several months has been organizing the towns, areas, and down to neighborhoods. We've been providing information to local Rotary clubs, to community organizations, and to neighborhood groups about the advantages of a GMRS neighborhood network. Down the line, we'll be training citizens on the radio use and developing standards, coordinating efforts, and building out our repeater infrastructure. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. We're providing tools for public service agencies. And most importantly, we're working to ensure longevity. In order to do that, we will be in the process of working with either an existing nonprofit or setting up a nonprofit to ensure longevity of this of the assets. So next one, I somehow got out of sync here on my, pardon me. So back to organizing a neighborhood. Contact your local radio group. And the local radio groups will certainly be available by outreach. You can contact either Damian or myself. Our contact information will be up on the network at the conclusion of the presentation. We'll be teaching you how to obtain and learn how to use a radio. We'll be talking to your neighborhood about it, and we'll be helping you organize a neighborhood obtain equipment. So moving on then, organizing the town. I think when we look at organizing the town, the most important thing to consider is form the core group of dedicated residents. And number two, fundraising is vital. You need to establish a budget, planning goals. We went through this over the last 4 months in Cazadero. We need to solicit angels and key contributors. And we needed to establish and utilize an existing 501c3 as a fiscal sponsor to hold and disperse funding as necessary. That's key to making this thing work. The next steps, of course, would be purchasing repeaters if necessary for area and network neighborhood coverage. purchasing and programming radios for the neighborhoods to utilize and purchase. And we need to communicate FCC licensing information to users when needed and end up with the distribution of radios, selling them at cost, and establishing training and weekly check-in protocol procedures. So turning over back to Damian. So all yours now.
All right, so this slide is just about who you can contact. Again, this presentation is going to be available for anybody to see. I'll have a link for that I'll put into the chat here in just a little bit. But this just highlights which areas have somebody stewarding them right now. And as well, for those of you who would like to participate in a bigger way, there's 2 amateur radio clubs listed if you were interested in becoming an amateur radio operator. That is an important piece of this entire puzzle. And then a little bit more about other organizations in different areas that you might be interested in contacting. So back to you, Mike.
Thank you. I'd like to talk a little bit about Cazadero. I live in Cazadero, so I'm very familiar with the setup here. We have basically 3 repeaters in the pipeline. In fact, 2 of them will be live tomorrow. A repeater at the Wildwood location, which is on Old Cazadero Road, and a repeater on Moorheart Ridge, which will provide, generally speaking, a good population of reception to most addresses in the Cazadero area, we believe. We won't know until we test out the repeaters once they've been installed. We have an ongoing community organization that is working on this project. And most importantly, I guess the group that really got this thing going was Tony Goodwin and his East Austin Creek neighborhood. They've had a mature radio network that's been operating for about 3 years. They set up following the Kincaid fire, and it's been used since that time. Basically, the neighborhood consisted of about 19 households, and they were able to communicate with each other, determine who was evacuating, who didn't evacuate. And if they didn't evacuate, they were able to communicate with one another to make sure that folks that elected to stay were safe and protected. So there are many, many benefits to the Cazadero model. We learned a lot in the last 4 months in setting this system up now town-wide. And we were very fortunate. We reached out to the 2 angels in town, were the Cazadero Volunteer Firefighters Association and the Cazadero Community Club, which generously contributed funds to get us going and is very, very much appreciated. So Damian, let's turn it over to you for the Coastal Hills area and some of the other areas that you've been closely involved with.
All right, thank you, Mike. For the Coastal Hills, we have 3 repeaters that have been in operation for since last November. At Fort Ross, Timber Cove, and currently up on Muniz Ranch. The community was incredibly helpful in getting this all together, along with the fire departments. We're looking to expand more toward Annapolis and toward Jenner to cover more of the coastal range. And we currently do have a weekly radio network that in which about 50, there are about 50 participants in that, and about 20 who participate each week. So for Grayton and Green Valley, they have a growing simplex network throughout the area, and they have an excellent dedicated support group. Bob Dozer was one of the people listed in the contacts screen previously. If you live in that area, it'd be good to give him a call if you're interested in participating. For the lower Russian River Valley, that would include Guerneville, Monterey, and everything really surrounding that along the Russian River. There is 1 repeater in the pipeline. And we have ongoing discussion for placement of repeaters at critical infrastructure sites, expanding within that geographic area as we can. And we do have a need for neighborhood leadership in Guerneville, Monterey, and the surrounding areas to implement neighborhood networks. At the end of this presentation, there is a slide that gives a link to a form. And you could choose to fill that out, or if you're interested, you could also just email us. And either way, we will get your information and we'd love to talk to you, especially if you're in one of the areas that does not yet already have an active group. The Lower Russian River does have one, but we need to expand that quite a bit. For Occidental, Safer West County is on their way to installing a repeater in the Occidental area. We have a need in Occidental for someone who would like to learn about radio and help organize members of their community. Sebastopol has a large organized simplex network throughout the city and neighboring areas with solid support managed by the city. Those interested in learning more should contact Stan Green. So thank you, Linda, and everyone who organized this event for the opportunity to talk about this project. And thank you to all of you who are listening this evening. We hope to hear from everyone on the net.
Thank you so much, Mike and Damian, for all of your excellent work on this. And I look forward to more folks stepping forward and participating in this process. A few brief notes on county funding that I wanted to update all of you on, and then I'm going to hand it over to Jason Wilson to go ahead and ask those questions and direct them to the appropriate person. So first update is that the county is continuing to fund our red flag upstaffing program, which I think Cyndi might have mentioned or Nancy might have mentioned earlier. Which means that we will have more firefighters on duty during those red flag or severe fire weather events. Also, we recently gave away $4 million on vegetation management projects, including some projects in West County. And importantly, $3 million more will be allocated on the consent calendar on July 13th, our upcoming board meeting. And some of those are specifically going to be targeting the Lower Russian River and Bohemian Corridor. They were projects that didn't quite comply with the California Environmental Quality Act, but we're still really important projects. So we're going to be providing some technical assistance to help those projects comply with CEQA and then to be able to move forward with funding. We also allocated during budget hearings, was that last week or the week before? The week before, $2 million of one-time funding and $1.5 million of ongoing funding to support fire services. And we're specifically going to be looking at sustainable and effective fire services in Bodega Bay, Zone 6 in North County, the CSA 40s, as well as Kenwood, and trying to facilitate some consolidation efforts amongst those agencies. And then based on our Municipal Advisory Council priorities, which they sort of gave us some input on how to allocate our tourism investment funds and our community investment funds, and recognizing the severity of the current fire season, the 5th District Office is planning on prioritizing wildfire risk reduction and kind of community preparedness efforts for the wildfire season. So we will be accepting community investment fund and tourism impact fund grants and kind of prioritizing that particular issue this year. So if you're interested in receiving a mini grant for a community prep type of an effort, you can email us at District 5, and that's the number 5, not spelled out, at sonoma-county.org. I also wanted to mention that we did have an evacuation drill in Occidental. I did see one question already come in about that. And I want to thank many of the folks who are on this panel were there and active participants, and really, really grateful for all of their work. I want to acknowledge that not everyone got the message. They were waiting for the message and it didn't necessarily come. And so the good news is that A, that was just a drill, and B, that's exactly why we do drills. And we're actually already implementing some changes based on how that Occidental evacuation drill went down. And so for instance, I talked to Chief Lenardi afterwards. He's actually planning on altering the pitch of the firehouse siren. I'm also aware of the fact that there is an exciting new program where we're trying to provide surge capacity to the sheriff's office by actually training regional park staff and potentially installing high-low sirens on regional parks vehicles so that we have more mobile sirens. Because at the end of the day, we know that so many forms of communication in West County are fallible. That's why it's important to do everything that Misti suggested, sign up for every possible communication system you can. But at the end of the day, a knock on the door, or a honk in your driveway, or a high-low siren on a vehicle, that is really going to be that boots on the ground is one of the best methods that we've got. So we're actually trying to create more capacity so we have more folks driving around our neighborhoods with those high-low sirens to supplement our awesome sheriff's deputies. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason, who's going to go through some of the questions. We've got about 20 minutes for Q&A. So as a reminder, you can put that in the Q&A function in Zoom, or you can go ahead and type that into the Facebook chat.
Okay, I'm going to go through a short one really quick. Diana Rich is asking that Damian likes slides that if that could be put in the chat, or Damian, I know you did say that you would put a link to your PowerPoint in the chat. We have another question from Laura Goldman. It's a three-part question. She does ask, because her internet connection is spotty, that we email her this response, but I think there's some good questions, and I'll go ahead and read them all. Number one, what did the county learn from the emergency communication exercise in Occidental when many of us did not receive phone alerts and weren't able to participate? Please let us know what you're doing to remedy this situation, as effective communication is vital during a time of crisis. Our next one is, how is the county dealing with problems we experienced through the emergency evacuation drill? For example, I and many others who signed up for SoCo Alert and also signed up for the Evac drill didn't receive text or email alerts or phone calls. We are grateful to Fire Safe Occidental's excellent organizing, but they couldn't help during the drill as it was a county organized exercise. I'm a neighborhood leader, and it was unfortunate to be in the dark about what to do and how to be helpful if this had been a real evacuation. Anybody want to field those two?
So I touched a little bit on some of the conversations that I had afterwards, but I'd be curious if Nancy and Misti, if you have any feedback that you want to share as well.
I don't really have any answers, but I do know that Jorge Rodriguez has picked up a bunch of, we got about 160 responses to surveys, and I know he's looking at that. So hopefully people who did not get that information filled that out, because that really helps them pinpoint where those weak spots are in the system. But then I can just reiterate one more time from what Misti and others has said, is that I think SoCo Alert's a great warning system. I think Nicholls a great warning system. I think WEA is a great warning system. I think they're all great warning systems, but we have found over and over again that there is not one great warning system that works for everybody. And so I can urge everybody here to please sign up for and make sure you're enabled to receive each and every type of alert available to you, all the way down to our newest Noaa weather radios. The Noaa weather radios are particularly valuable because they're a redundancy system outside the cell network, because they use radio waves, not cell waves. So we're not, when our cell towers go down, our radio tower that pulls that signal from Noaa weather could still be operating. So I think it's important to do that, but I'd be happy, Supervisor Hopkins, to follow up with Jorge Rodriguez and see if we can't get answers to those other questions offline.
Thank you so much. Misti, did you have any feedback after participating?
Not specifically on the questions that were brought up. Our role was really to support emergency management. I think Nancy covered it really well.
Great. So basically, make sure that you are signed up for all of those alerts, and we will be utilizing all of those during a disaster. And then again, one of the conversations that I had with some of the community leaders afterwards was really the need to have more mobile high-low sirens. And so we are working on bolstering our staff capacity, knowing that, if there were sort of what we saw in 2019, right, where the entire state was pretty much on fire, we might not be able to get the mutual aid from other law enforcement agencies because they might be sort of, deployed elsewhere in other fires in other counties. And so we're trying to create more capacity within our county system. So we've got more boots on the ground and cars on the road with those high-low sirens. Back to you, Jason, for the next question.
Okay. Mark D'Souza has a question. With the 4th of July right around the corner, how will the county be clamping down on people lighting fireworks, specifically in West County, Pasadena area? All fireworks are illegal in SoCo, but that doesn't stop bad players.
And I can start with that. Cyndi, I'm not sure if you have anything to add to, but I'll start. So we're
I'm gonna punt to you, but because we, obviously you guys are the heroes in this, because we really rely on you guys to be able to seed yourself in these communities where this is happening. So I'll let
Yeah.
you take the ball and run, Misti.
All right, thank you. So I want to start with the last thing that commenter said, which is all fireworks are illegal in Sonoma County. All of them, even the safe and sane ones, all of them are illegal. So that being said, we are putting out that educational messaging. I know the fire district did as well, the county is as well, to remind people, because it's a little confusing. If a city is selling them over here, why can't I use them when I live over here? So the best thing to do is, we have deputies who are out on patrol who are looking for those types of activities on 4th of July, but we have a lot going on with just frankly not a lot of deputies on the road. So the best thing that you can do is, if you see people who are lighting off fireworks, call it into dispatch with a location. The challenge with fireworks, I'll be very honest, is that when you hear them, sometimes you know there are fireworks going on, right? This happens to me pretty much every 4th of July out here in West County. I hear fireworks, I know they're going on, but I can't pinpoint a location. So it makes it difficult if you call in and you say, I hear fireworks. If we don't know exactly where to send the deputies, we can have them in the general area to figure it out. But if there's a way that you can identify where the people are located who are lighting off the fireworks and call in dispatch with that information, that's ideal. So I'm going to give you 2 numbers. I think everybody is familiar with 911. Those are immediate life safety issues. Somebody is hurt, somebody's at risk. We also have our dispatch line, our non-emergency dispatch line, which is 565-2121. So you are welcome to call that number, that dispatch number, call in saying, you know, I hear fireworks or I see fireworks, be as specific as you can with it, and then we'll get deputies out there as quickly as we can. It absolutely is a challenge, and I feel your pain on this one. And I'll turn it
Okay,
back
we
to
have
you.
a question from. Okay, we have a question for Misti from Phil Gross. Misti, last year during the Wall Bridge fire, residents of Hacienda received none of these alerts. What's up with that?
What's up with that? All right. So as we've kind of talked about tonight, there is no perfect alerting system. Cyndi talked about some of the challenges we have out here in West County with possibly a power shutoff, lack of Wi-Fi, lack of cell service, lack of internet. So we know at some point that residents of Hacienda got the message that there was an evacuation order because that area was evacuated. So why did this gentleman and his neighbors not specifically get that alert? 2 things that you can do, Phil. You can shoot me an email. I'll pop it in the chat with your name and your phone number, and I can double check that you're signed up for Nicholls and see if there are any issues on the registration side of Nicholls for you. I would recommend doing the same thing for SoCo Alert, because I know that when people have issues with SoCo Alert where they're signed up and they're expecting to receive something and they don't, I know the people at Department of Emergency Management are able to sort of check and see what's going on. But again, there are technological issues that might prevent you from getting the alert in the first place, which is why we have the high lows, neighbors helping neighbors, boots on the ground, things of that nature. So I'll put my address here in the chat, and Jason, I will turn it back to you.
And really quickly,
Great.
Misti, if I could jump, or Jason, if I could jump in on this really quick. I did a community event yesterday for the Reedley-Wallace area, and I was really surprised that that a lot of folks in this community, which is where I live now, were not aware of the alert wildfire cameras. That is not an alerting tool. I want to be clear about that. That is not an alerting tool, but that is an empowerment tool that we have as residents of Sonoma County. That is probably for me, one of the most empowering tools as a firefighter, but as a homeowner and a property owner, also one of the most empowering tools. Alert wildfire cameras are all throughout Sonoma County, and these cameras have artificial intelligence to where they can detect smoke, alert our dispatch center. Our dispatch center can take control of that camera along with CAL FIRE. It gives the exact coordinates, GPS, latitude, longitude of where that smoke is at. And some of these cameras actually have the artificial intelligence to map where that fire is going to go and how fast it'll get there based on weather conditions, topography, fuel type, all of that. We have this amazing tool that is not just for firefighters. This is something y'all can put your hands on, go on the website and look at these cameras and actually see what's going on. So I was really shocked to hear that so many people in my community did not know about alertwildfire.org. These cameras are all over and you can see what's going on real time in our community related to where fires are. So, and I'll plug in here right now and put the link in, or Nancy or somebody can plug in and put that link in. That is a massive empowerment tool for homeowners. It's not an alerting tool, but it is an empowerment tool for you to be able to see where things are happening in our community, how quick it's happening, what it looks like. I can't stress enough that that is such an empowerment tool.
Okay, I'm going to jump over to one on Facebook right now. It's from Pixie Anderson, and maybe Misti, you could address this one regarding SoCo alerts and Nicholls. What if you have multiple properties and want alerts for all of them?
Jason, can you repeat the question?
The question is, what if you have multiple properties and you would like alerts for all of them? Say you have 3 different properties in 3 different areas.
Awesome. Sign up for alerts for all 3 of them. So when you go into Nicholls, you can put in different addresses, and Nancy, correct me if I'm wrong, you can do the same with SoCo Alert. So that way you can have your multiple properties or your mother or your kid's school, whatever works for you. That's the easiest thing, I think, is to go into socoalert.org and manage your account. So that way you can have those multiple properties. Same thing if you go to Nicholls, go to nicholls.com and manage your account that way. I think that's the easiest and most effective way to make sure that you're getting alerts for all of your properties. Back to Jason.
We have a comment. We have something from Laura Goldman, and I just want to recognize her question. She's having problems with her SoCo Alert account access. And Laura, I have your email address, and we'll follow up with you tomorrow and see if we can help you out with that. Next is a question from Patricia Gonzalez. I live in Zone Northwest 2. How is my home going to be safe during an evacuation? I live off West Steel, and there was not any roadblocks in place to stop people from coming into the neighborhood. We had a lot of homeless people going around and ringing doorbells, checking if people were home. They were also checking people's yards. How are you going to avoid the backup that we experienced during the 2019 evacuation, where it took 2 hours just to drive to RP?
All right, and I can take that one, Jason. So the first part of that with where you live is that's Santa Rosa Police Department who provides law enforcement services for you. So I'm not trying to push it off in any way, it's just that I can't answer to how they do their evacuations and how they provide their security. So my recommendation on that part is to contact Santa Rosa Police Department, so that way they can give you some more information and you can share your concerns with them. The second one about the traffic backup, it's kind of a challenge because you're talking about the basic idea of putting a bunch of cars on a narrow road, or a whole lot of cars, even on not so narrow of a road, but it's a basic capacity issue. There's just too many people trying to use the same route. I can't guarantee there's not going to be a traffic backup ever again. I actually think the opposite is true. There will always be traffic during an evacuation when you're trying to get a large amount of people out in a very quick period of time. So it's frustrating and it's irritating, and we all feel like we have better things to be doing than sitting in traffic for 2 hours. I feel ya. On the other hand, people aren't getting hurt and they're not losing their lives. So that's a success. So my best advice is to leave early. So if you are under an evacuation warning, that's when you want to get out. If you want to avoid the traffic, or if you have any sort of access and functional needs, perhaps you don't drive at night, perhaps you have large animals. When you hear that evacuation warning, that's when you should be leaving. I know that's not always the case, especially when a fire first starts. It's kind of hectic and chaotic trying to get everybody out at once. But if you have the luxury of time and you hear that evacuation warning, that's when you want to leave, so you can avoid that traffic backup if at all possible. I'll turn it back to you, Jason.
Great, thank you. Phil Gross has another question. The new evacuation zones are often bordered by a road. So residents on opposite sides of a road, for example, are in different zones. Sometimes residents in one zone have to drive through a different zone to evacuate. Why were zones not established along geographic features such as ridges that surround the valley?
Take that one, Jason. Thank you. That's a good question about how the zones are formed. So occasionally we will use geographic features, but for the most part, we need to use things, borders and boundaries that are very clear and easy for people to understand, and that are also small enough so that we're not overly evacuating. So it's, if you look at evacuation maps kind of across the state, it's pretty standard practice to use roads because those are tangible boundaries for the general public to understand. Really the only time that we're using those geographic boundaries are way, way, way out in rural areas where we don't have roads to use, but it makes it a little bit more difficult if you're talking about, you know, west of this ridge line or north of this creek. That's more difficult for most people to understand, which is why we're using the roads for the most part. Back to you, Jason.
Thank you so much. I just want to recognize Katrina Phillips. Katrina, we appreciate your offer to help and also your interest in the amateur radio system. And tomorrow I will pass along your email address to both Damian and Mike and connect you with those two folks. And we're going to move over to Facebook. We have here Christina Tours Royston. She said the property owner was mowing their meadow during the heat wave last week. I alerted the local fire station and the fire department, but they couldn't do anything about it. The following day, the mower caught the grass fire and my neighbors and I almost lost our home. The fire department needs to be given the authority to stop a property owner from this kind of dangerous activity.
So I'll take that one. Listen, I couldn't agree with you more. The challenge that we have is our authority only goes so far. And obviously, I think when we look at everything from defensible space and what people are allowed to do and not allowed to do, we are willfully behind on being a little bit more strict, not only in our county, but within the state of California. The challenge we have when it comes to mowing is that there is nothing in state law or in local government law that says someone can't mow on a 100-degree day. Is it smart? Is it responsible? Absolutely not. Will we go out and try to say, could you, would you, can you please stop mowing because it's really a bad idea? Yes, we can do that, but we do not have the authority, unfortunately, and I'm not passing the buck. I'm saying this is something we have to fix, but we don't have the authority to tell somebody they cannot cut their grass, mow their lawn, use a chainsaw, use a weed eater. We don't have that authority. I wish we did. We don't. However, and this is no comfort to anybody. I'm going to preface this. I'm going to be really honest. This is no comfort to anybody. If somebody does act negligently and mow on a 100-degree day and start a fire, they are liable for that fire and all of the costs incurred from that fire. That's no comfort to any of us. Again, I wish that we had that authority. We just don't. And again, it's just the facts. But I will tell you that in my fire district, if you call us and say somebody's mowing on a 90-degree day and it's 10% relative humidity, or a red flag or whatever it is, I promise you one of my staff is going to go out there and do their best to say, hello, do you not realize what you're doing? So while we cannot make them stop, we will certainly do our best to try to get them to recognize the error of their ways.
And I think that is a great note to end it on. And, before we wrap it up, I just want to say thank you so much to all of our amazing panelists, not just for being here tonight, not just for being incredibly informative and educating us all about really important topics, but for what you do every day when you're not in this town hall, which is to go out there and make sure that our communities are safer and more prepared. So with that, and one sort of final thing that I wanted to add to Cyndi's point, there is one form of vegetation management that is actually safe to utilize, even in 100-degree temperatures, as long as they have water and shade, and that is grazing. So cows, goats, sheep, all of those guys can do their work without having a fire hazard. But if it is that hot, obviously shade and water is really important to your livestock. So on that note, thank you all so much for joining us, and take care and have a great night.